broadcast live on Charter Communications, Cable TV Channel 8, and AT&T UVerse Channel 99, and is being recorded to be replayed on the following Monday and Friday at 1 p.m. on Charter Channel 71 and Comcast Channel 25. Meetings can also be viewed from the city's website, www.cityofcapitola.org. Our technician tonight is Scott Gray. As a reminder, please turn off your cell phones during the meeting, and if you should come up to speak at the podium, please sign the sign-in sheet. So, roll call, please.
Commissioner Story?
Here.
Commissioner Welsh?
Here.
Commissioner Westman?
Here.
Commissioner Smith?
Here.
And Chairperson Newman.
Here. Okay. Join me in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next item on the agenda is oral communications. Do we have any additions or deletions to the agenda?
No, Mr. Chairman, but we do have a request for a continuance for item 4B.
That's on the consent agenda, is it?
That's correct.
Okay, we'll do.
So, can we just approve the consent agenda and that will automatically be continued, or do we have to do it separately?
I think you should vote on the continuance request.
Okay, so we'll do that when we get to the consent agenda. Next item is time for public comment. If anyone would like to address the Planning Commission on an item that is not on the agenda that has some relevance to what we do. Seeing no one. Any commissioner comments? Yes,
I have a
Commissioner
comment.
Story.
Yes, thank you. I wanted to report to the commission, since I'm your representative on the Art and Cultural Commission, just to what happened at the last meeting. They received submissions for a proposed rail, sidewalk rail, that will go in front of Bella Roma and along the law office building there and down to California Street. So, and at the upcoming next meeting, there's a committee that's reviewing. There were only 2 submissions. They're going to be reviewing those and making a final selection, and then Public Works, I imagine, will be taken over to prepare that area and that new rail. And both submissions are very nice, very attractive. But if you're interested, if any of the commissioners are interested in looking at the options and weigh in, I would encourage you to do so. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Seeing no one. Staff comments. Do we have any comments?
Staff has no comments.
Okay, that takes us to the approval of minutes. We have 2 minutes to deal with. First is a special meeting from February 16th. Anyone have any changes to the minutes?
I'd move approval.
Addition?
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
It passes unanimously. The second minutes are for the regular meeting of March 2, 2017. Any additions or corrections?
I'll make a motion to approve them.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
That passes too. I'm glad to see that all the commissioners are paying attention to the minutes ahead of time, so we don't waste our time here.
Actually, I did note that one of them had me as a chairperson, but since I can't recall which one it was,
Okay, yeah, well. Next, this does take us to the consent calendar. We have 2 items on the consent calendar, and the second item is 2205 Wharf Road, and there's a request to continue that to June 1st, is it? Correct. We have a motion.
I'll make a motion to continue it to June 1st.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
That passes unanimously. If anyone is here for that item, we'll see you next month. Then the last item on the consent agenda is a revised environmentally sensitive habitat area map. Has everyone had a chance to review that?
Yeah, and I'd like to pull that item for discussion.
Okay. Is there anyone here in the audience that has come on that item? If not, I would suggest we move that to the end of the agenda and deal with items that people are here for. So that takes us, remind me to do that, by the way, when we get to the end. Takes us to public hearings. The first one is 1649 41st Avenue. This is a design permit to replace the existing convenience store. Is that right, convenience store?
That's correct.
With a new 2,573 square foot convenience sign and sign permit with variance for 2 new wall signs at the Shell gas station located in the CC zoning district. Staff report, please.
Good evening, Commissioners. Before you, as just stated, we have a design permit, sign permit, and variance for the Shell gas station at 1649 41st Avenue. It's located in the Community Commercial Zoning District. Here's an image of the Shell station as viewed from Capitola Road. As you can see, there's a small convenience store in the center. The applicant is proposing to remove the 2 pump stations on either side and build out the store, more than doubling it in size and bringing it closer to Capitola Road. This is the site plan. So the rectangle in blue is the existing store. The yellow outline is the canopy cover for the gas pumps. And this shows the new footprint of the full store. So they plan to demolish the existing store and increase the size and build it out. So now I'll go over the design with you. This is the new facade that will face Capitola Road, the image you had seen previously. The canopies are the area that will stay where they are today. So the area in gray hatch on the top, that's the existing canopy, and they have no plans to change those canopies. So the building itself will change. They're proposing stone veneer, wainscot along the base of the building, metal trim, and then metal panels. So it'll have a really clean, upgraded look of that shiny metal finish that panels that you see on newer commercial buildings these days. This is the south elevation, and as you can see, it's the same materials on the south elevation. I do want to point out on the Capitola Road elevation, the windows, at first the application came in without windows along that facade, and because it was facing the street, there is a refrigerator behind that, so they're faux windows, but just to give that building more of a presence to the street, the applicant made that change at submittal. This is the west elevation to the top, so that would be facing Orchard Supply Hardware, and then the east elevation would be facing 41st Avenue. So as you can see, there's a new sign on the 41st Avenue elevation, and then also a new sign on that Capitola Road facade. And again, the same materials are carried through on both of these elevations. Next, I'll go over the sign proposal. So again, the yellow is the area of the canopy coverage. There's an existing car wash sign that will be replaced with an updated sign in blue. There are currently 2 Shell logos that are on the canopy, as shown in this picture where they are. They're very small. They're, I think, 4 square feet in size. So they're very small. And that was in the most recent application that came through. Those were approved. Also, there's a monument sign that it actually goes beyond the regulations of the code, but it was replacing an existing sign that was there. So it's a little taller than we allow by code, but it was existing non-conforming, and they were allowed to replace it. And within this application, because they're tearing down the building, there actually are 2 wall signs on the existing building, and the signs they're proposing to put on the new building are the same dimensions as those signs, but once you've torn down a building, you need to bring your signs bring the whole building back into the new building into compliance, and that would include the signs. So what they're proposing is the Great Good sign over the 2 entryways. And one of those arrows is incorrect. One should be facing Capitola Roads at the top of the building, so I apologize for that. So when looking at a variance, right now the regulations are on a corner lot. You're allowed to have 1 wall sign facing each of the streets. So they do have one of those Shell signs on the canopy. They also have a wall sign on the car wash building, so they have multiple wall signs, currently 3, so they're over the limit of 2 for a corner lot. The additional 2 signs will bring it to 5 wall signs in the property. And when reviewing a variance, you have to find unique circumstances that are tied to the lot. And within the Shell property, because it's a corner lot, they have an advantage visually that they're on a corner lot and it's prominent, so they can be seen. They currently aren't taking advantage of the full allotment of signage that they could have in terms of you're allowed for a wall sign 1 square foot per linear foot of frontage, of the building frontage. So having 4 square feet of the small Shell logos is it's small, and also the sign on the car wash is not too large. So they're well under their allotment of the amount of total square footage they could have for a wall sign, and they've chosen to break it up, and this would further break it up by having the other 2 signs. But their staff is unable to identify any unique circumstances because it actually is an advantageous lot on a corner parcel. A grant of special privileges, if you were to grant the variance, we could make a finding that this is not a grant of special privileges. The Chevron across the street has multiple wall signs. It has signs on the canopy, and it also has a monument sign on the corner. And then as you go up the street, there's another, as you're approaching towards the highway going north, there's another gas station that also has multiple signage, because gas stations tend to have multiple structures on a site, and they, so it would not be considered a grant of special privilege. So in reviewing this application, staff is recommending that you deny the variance due to the not being able to make a finding of special circumstances tied to the lot. And we suggest approval of the design permit subject to the conditions of approval and the findings within the staff report. And I'm available for any questions.
Any questions at this point? Yes.
I have one. Could you tell me how they're going to deal with garbage on the site? I didn't see any garbage enclosure, anything like that. Did they give you any information about?
I'll actually refer to the applicant on that one.
Okay.
If there's.
Any other, we'll
And I just,
open up to the public, and then you can address that question.
So-
Thank you.
And I just have one more comment. I'm reaching for this one, but my recollection is that when that Shell station was originally approved, there was a great deal of discussion about, the little Shell logo that's on there. And I think that was decided that it wasn't a sign, it was just sort of a logo item. But I don't know. I don't think they said Shell on them, it's just the Shell itself.
I could look back, but it is just the Shell, so.
Yeah.
The logo.
Yeah, they weren't allowed to use the word on it.
I have one question. Just a clarification. You said that the overall square footage that's allowed for signage is not being used completely in the new proposal, including all of the signs, or in what's there today?
I can do a quick calculation on that and come back with you with the correct answer.
Yes.
Yeah, and while you're looking at it, just to clarify, the size of the sign on the new building facing 41st Avenue and the size that's being proposed on the side of the building facing Capitola Road, are they proposed to be the same size?
They are.
Okay, maybe the applicant could address that as well, and whether or not those could be maybe in proportion to the linear view on those two. And I also had a question about the Chevron across the street. If you could bring back up that picture, what is the sign that's on their end there? What?
Yeah,
it says 24 hours, I think.
Yeah.
Oh, is that what that says? Just says 24-hour designation. Is that counted as one of the Chevron signs, where it says 24 hours?
It should be counted towards one of their wall signs.
Okay, so they have one in front, one on the side. And of course, the canopy and the monument signs.
Yes.
Okay, all right, thank you.
And just to clarify on the Chevron, the chevron emblem that's on this end of the canopy is not repeated on the opposite end of the canopy.
I'm unsure of that. We could take a look on Google Maps.
So before we go any further, I've kind of confused the issue here. Let me clarify the process here. So after the staff report, sometimes the commissioners have questions for the staff, and there may be questions that someone, either the applicant or someone else in the audience, has an answer for, but we don't engage in like a workshop here. What we do is then, after the staff has finished responding and we open up to the public, if you can remember the questions, then you can have some input on those. So I think, Katie, you owe us an answer.
Yes.
And then I have a question for you.
Okay. So the car wash is 23 square feet, and the Great Food sign is 23 square feet. 46. So we're up to 50 square feet, and the building that is proposed it's not scaled right on the plans, but I feel comfortable saying they're well under the 50 square feet limit, because I believe one side alone is about 100 feet long on the new building, and then it's probably about 35 feet wide, 40 feet wide is my estimate.
Okay. So one of the questions here piqued my interest in terms of the logos, because that seems to be one of the sources of the problem here. And the question of what defines a sign and whether those logos, small logos, are really signs if they don't say anything.
I believe they would count as a sign because it is a logo, and we would count the sign area. We would just measure around the logo of the sign. But
Is there something in our definition of signs in our ordinance that would shed any light on that?
we can pull up the definition of sign area.
Because
I do recall that when this came before us last time, that we counted those logos as signage.
I can see the Chevron one, for example, has a word on it.
Yeah. Not the one on this end, though.
Yeah, but not the one on the canopy.
Right.
A sign means any device such as a display board, bill, poster, picture, lithograph, map, plat, banner, barber pole, bunting, flag, pennant, whirligig, balloon, valance, light festoon, merchandise display, structure, mural, or other device or light structure used for the purpose of advertising, informing, or identifying, and placed so as to be seen from the exterior of a building or premises for which it is located. And then for sign area, for a sign on a building wall having no separate structure, sign area is measured from the visible border or background color distinction, which includes all graphic letters and background.
Any other questions? If not, we're going to open up the public hearing and first ask the applicant or applicant's representative if they would like to comment.
Good evening. My name is Don Johnson with Peninsula Petroleum, and I'm asking you to consider approving the variance simply because we're well under the sign size that you have specified for the building that we're proposing. But the other thing is the actual sign, the Great Goods sign, is the brand of our convenience stores. We have a chain of convenience stores that currently runs from Soledad to the Oregon border. And with promotional products and fuel rewards program that we have networked our advertising as well. So we run the same promotions in Soledad as we do in Crescent City, and the consumer can identify us by our Great Goods image. We've been in the process of re-imaging all the sites here this last year to this Great Goods, removing Food Mart from the front of the buildings. And without the signage on the building, no one knows who we are. So that's really my special request here. And I feel since we're under the size of the signs that are on the lot, then I'm hoping you see the same as I do. You spoke about the size, the dimensions of the signs on the building. It's to stay within that size requirement. So, I mean, if you'd like us to make the sign bigger on that side of the building, I'm sure we could work that out.
I wasn't necessarily thinking bigger.
Well, proportionately, it's about, what we're really covering is basically the front door. And then, since there isn't a door on that side facing, I guess it's 41st.
Capitola Road.
Or Capitola Road. You just can't see anything. So, I mean, that one just is it's a corner lot, and it's hard to see what's on there.
I notice you do have car wash in the window, though, that's pretty large.
That goes away with the new building, because we've proposed that those windows will be, what do you call them, just faux windows, because that's going to be a cooler space inside the store. So those will just be blank window paints.
Any questions for Mr. Johnson?
Just one quick question, if you don't mind, and I could look at the plans, but since you're here, I'm going to ask you instead.
Sure.
Are those Great Goods signs all backlit?
No.
Okay.
It's just a decal on metal.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
So as far as the garbage goes, are you going to have an enclosure or?
Site currently has an enclosure for garbage on the lot, and we're going to continue to use the same facility for garbage.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else like to address this item? If not, I will close the public hearing and ask the commissioners for comments. Anyone?
I'll let somebody else jump in there. I have history from the last meeting where I thought we were pretty lenient with them by doing the LED signs, and I mean, I'm not opposed to them putting Great Foods, but I think that they have some signage there already. So there'd have to be some exchange, I think, for me, but I'm open to listen to what other people have to say.
If I may chime in, and the reason I brought up that question about the relative sizes on the front, 41st, and on the side, and because one of the arguments for the variance presented by the applicant is the preferential treatment or being consistent with the station across the street, the one down the street. But looking at the Chevron building, they have one large sign in front, and then that very small 24 hours on the side. And I assume that there's nothing on the other side that we couldn't see. I don't exactly remember that, but it doesn't seem to me that being a compelling argument that they should be allowed 2 full-size signs, because that goes beyond what the Chevron station has. Now, but I certainly appreciate the need to inform the consumer about what's there, but I think it should be in proportion. And if the basis for the variance is comparability, that it should be comparable to what's across the street. So that's why I was proposing they could have the larger one in front, but on the side where there's shorter linear space, they should maybe have a smaller sign on the end there, fronting Capitola Road. And so those are just my views on that issue of the comparison, and keeping everything fair, and also providing them with the ability to let the consumer know from Capitola Road what's inside that structure. So those are my thoughts about it.
Could Could we go back, because what we're talking about are two separate buildings on the site, right? The car wash sign is going to go on the car wash building. And I do think one difference between this site and the site across the street is that they don't have the car wash facility across the street. So I'm okay with having, a sign on the car wash itself. I'm okay with sort of the little logo signs. They really don't have much of an impact for me. I think I am in agreement with Commissioner Story that, the side that faces onto Capitola Road, I'm not certain that that sign needs to be the same size as the one that's on 41st Avenue. And proportionally for, the scale of the building, I think Commissioner Story might be right that if that sign could be slightly smaller, that would make more sense to me. Because what we're talking about, the car wash signs, fine with me. They get to have two signs, one on either side of the building, and then all service stations get to have the sign out in front that gives the price. So it's really, for me, how the signs sort of fit on the building itself.
I could probably live with it if it were a smaller sign. My initial preference is, when I went out today and drove around that corner and looked at it, if you've got the car wash sign and now you're building the building out far enough that it's going to cover that up somewhat, having the other sign on the end of the building just, in my mind, complicates and clutters up the buildings on the corners. So I would really prefer not to have one on the end at all. But if it were smaller, significantly smaller, then I think I could probably live with it. That whole corner is with the two little shell signs, and if I'm not incorrect, on the drawing it's on that corner, but in reality, isn't it on the other end of the canopy?
Which one? The
The little shell sign.
shell?
There's like a shell on either side of the canopies, I thought. So
You're
are-
correct, yes.
There's only the shell on the canopy, well, there it is right there. It doesn't have it on the one on the 41st Ave, or the Capitola side.
No, but it has one on this end, and if you go to
On
the end
both
of the
sides,
canopy.
yes, you're right, yeah.
Okay, well, I'm having a lot of trouble following the logic of this discussion. There is not an issue of sign size here. They couldn't even go bigger than they already are. There's an issue of the number of signs and whether it complies with our ordinance. And I don't like the concept of us just taking the whole big picture and mashing it up and saying, well, this is what we'd like to see on a lot. We don't care about the number. We don't care that the size is already compliant. We'd like this is what would look good to me. I don't think that's a good procedure we have an ordinance. It has certain requirements. There are certain rules for getting a variance. And I'm not seeing how this discussion is focusing on those considerations. The only problem I have is that these shells are so small and so unlike some signs in the sense of creating clutter or distraction or but that doesn't satisfy the requirements for a variance either. The requirements for a variance are that there are special circumstances. And if all the gas stations on 41st have 28 signs, they cannot come in and say we want 28 signs for that reason. That doesn't work. You have to have a special circumstance and that's state law that justifies a variance from the existing ordinance. The staff is saying there is no special circumstance here. It doesn't matter that the competition has lots of signs. That's not a special circumstance.
Well, I'm hearing you, and that's why I was trying to remember when I remember when those canopies were put up and, you know, that mini mart was there. Not the sign on the corner, that happened later. And I thought there was some finding made that those did not count as signs as long as they didn't put the name on it. It was just sort of considered a decoration
Yeah, I think we included
on
it.
the building. And if you don't count those two signs, then they come into conformance with what we allow.
I do recall an in-depth discussion with the applicant during the hearing about, I think she referred to them as the pectin signs, the shell signs, and she went into detail on their request there, and I think she was making that argument, but I'd really have to go back and see, because I think it was probably the same thing of they already had existing signage on the building and then asking for additional signs on the canopy. So
Yeah,
I can go back and look at that previous hearing, and
My recollection, it said Shell, and they replaced them with these signs because this is part of the Shell Corporation's logo, and we approved it that way, and we gave them a little bit of lenience with the LED signs, which at that time was not, well, still isn't approved yet. So I thought we gave some lenience with the whole sign process at the time to help get what they said there was their image. You know, their corporate image was those pectins in the coloring scheme. So I don't know.
So in my mind, and I may not be completely aware of the definition of special circumstance, but in my mind, because they have a building that has signs on it, and the only reason that those signs can't be replaced is because they're tearing down that building and building a new building. If they were remodeling that building, those signs would stay. So in my mind, that is what warrants the cause for consideration of the signs.
Can I maybe just ask a question about, on the issue of special privileges? Is that not a factor of special circumstances warranting a variance?
It is.
Or is it an independent analysis about whether or not the variance should be considered because of special privileges right across the street?
So in reviewing a variance, you have to make two findings, and it's not either or. And the first is unique circumstances that are tied to the lot that prohibit this person from enjoying the lot as others in the vicinity would. And then the second is a finding that you're not granting a special privilege that others with the same circumstance in the vicinity would not be granted. So so I think there's findings of support that you would not be granting a special privilege. It's when we're looking at the unique circumstances tied to the lot, and I think it's often difficult within variance findings because oftentimes it's the rather than what's going on with the lot, it's what the development characteristics are in the built environment. So in the situation that we have here with multiple structures, it's not unique circumstances tied to the lot. It's a flat lot. It's a corner parcel. And within the review of a variance, you don't look at what is the built environment and what are the unique circumstances tied to the built environment. It's purely the property.
So again, if they took down the two Shell logos, the one on either ends of the canopy, then they would conform to our sign ordinance.
They would still be in violation because they have one more wall sign on the car wash, but they would be at 3 rather than 5.
Even though it's a separate building?
I believe so. I think wall signs.
This is pointing up how complicated our sign ordinance is.
Yeah, we do have a complicated, we spend hours and hours in our latest code update to go through signs, but to me, it just seems like You know, if this is going to be a stumbling block, maybe you got to pick your signs. I mean, some of the, like the car wash on the end of the car wash building, I don't know what good that does. You can, it's obvious it's a car wash coming out. I don't know, because the way the trees are built out and stuff, it's hard to see, but those, I guess they call them pectins, the shell signs on the, those are, I think, what everyone's looking for, if it's a Shell station or is it some other station. So, yeah, it gets kind of convoluted in this process.
We have an answer here.
One wall sign per business, and 2 are allowed for a corner lot.
So.
Does that answer it?
That answers it. So if the sign simply just says car wash, it doesn't in any way identify, is it a directional sign or?
I would say it's advertising a product, and it would fit within our.
I mean, because I agree with Chairperson Newman, there's really no basis for granting a variance. It just, there's nothing about the size, shape, the topography of the lot. There's nothing that gives you any, other than, you want to, but just because you want to isn't.
If we made a determination that those little shells aren't signs, what would that do for us down the road? Yeah.
Probably see a lot of logos.
Yeah, I might see a lot of those. Okay, anybody?
Now we're stumped. Because I would be, I mean, it would be reasonable to me if they had the little logo on this end and one sign on the new building and a sign on the car wash. That makes logical sense to me because it's separate buildings. And I could go there, but that means that we'd still be granting a variance, which I don't guess we can do.
If we don't grant a variance, they're down to 2 signs, right?
They'd be down to the signage that they have today.
Yeah.
But they'd be down to the signage that they have today, minus the 2 signs that are on the building they're going to tear down.
Correct.
So they'd have a car wash sign, and they'd have the 2 logo signs and the monument sign.
And they'd have the option, if you denied the variance without prejudice, they'd have the option to come back and redesign and maybe put a Shell logo next to the Great Foods and put that on the building and, come back with a different proposal that meets our sign code.
Okay, so that's a good point.
And could they add it to the monument sign?
They could not add to they could come
Because
back
we're
with a
size.
proposal to modify the monument sign, but it could not get
It
larger.
already has it. Yeah.
It's already too big.
So,
So if we make a motion to approve the
design.
design and approve the 2 signs on the building, plus the monument sign that's in the front, then we're okay?
That'd be approving the variance.
So I thought, there's nothing in the code about the gas station sign on the front, because, state law requires that they post their prices and that. So we're saying that that's an additional sign?
The monument sign.
Monument sign next to the prices?
'Cause
So typically, you would not be allowed a monument sign and a wall sign, but because it's a gas station, they're allowed to have the monument sign with the pricing.
So they're allowed to have a monument sign and a wall sign?
2 wall signs.
So if we approve that, the monument sign and 2 wall signs, and then we could give them the option of deciding whether they wanted the wall sign to remain on Capitola Avenue, or if they wanted to use that wall sign to go on the car wash. We really don't care whether it's either one of those right?
As far as variance, that's correct.
So I'm willing to make a motion that we approve them having 2 wall signs. They can work with the staff to determine if they want the 2 wall signs as proposed in the new convenience store, or if they would like to remove one of those and put a wall sign in its place on the car wash.
Your motion is to approve the design of the proposed building
Yes.
also?
Just to clarify, the two wall signs would be in addition to the 2 shells that are existing today.
Right. I'm not counting the 2 shells that are existing today as signs.
But that's still approving the variance, then, correct? Okay.
I guess
It's
it
kind of
depends
convoluted.
on your interpretation of the shell sign.
Yeah,
So do you think it would make some sense to continue this and get some sort of history on whether or not the Shell logos have been counted as signs before?
I'm pretty confident it was counted when did this update right here. And that was, we had all this, I'm pretty confident it was. You know, I don't have a real issue with the variance other than this property, we've given you folks a lot of leniency over, I've seen the Shell station 3 times in my term here now. And it's always been one of those things asking just for a little bit, which I don't think you're asking for the moon, but I've never seen Chevron here. I've never seen these other companies here asking. And my concern is they're going to come to us sooner or later, and they're going to want the same things that we've allowed you folks to have. So quite frankly, whether you have good foods on it or not, I don't know that anybody honestly really cares. They stop there to get fuel. If they need a quick food mart, they're going to go in there. But I get your brand naming. So personally, I don't have a real issue. The issue I have is this continuing variance issue that was going to catch up to us at some point. That's my...
Gas stations have been problematic because they tend to proliferate on gas. They have so many different functions, and they want to
Right.
make people aware of them. And we understand that, but that's also contrary to what the city is trying to create in its commercial zone. So, okay, if we, maybe
So
one more.
I need to understand the motion, I guess, a little bit better. So you're actually approving the variance?
Well, so do we,
You could just make a motion to approve the design and deny the variance and let them figure out how to comply.
What are you looking at me for? I honestly I could really go either way. Quite frankly, I don't, it's not so much that this variance kills me, it's just that it's an ongoing thing, you know, it's like this little,
okay. So I think I will make a motion to approve the design of the building and allow them to have 2 signs which conform to our ordinance plus the monument sign. And it will be up to them to, decide how that's going to be distributed. And if they want to come back at a later, I'll deny the variance without prejudice. So if they want to come back at a later date with, a proposal of removing the shell, however they want to do it, we would consider it.
Everyone understand the motion? Do we have a second?
Well, just to clarify it, this is to approve the monument sign and 2 signs in addition to the 2 Shell logos? No.
I don't think that's what.
No, okay, so it's the monument sign and just 2 signs, period.
Right.
And they choose what 2 signs they want to have.
So it's simpler said, it's approving the design permit and denying without prejudice the variance, period.
It's the staff recommendation.
I'd second that.
Okay, any further discussion? All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
I'm going to vote no, I think I mean, just for the reasons I think I stated, and that, because of comparable properties, that, I mean, and just out of fairness, I think that we should treat this applicant as we have, even if those were mistakes, but trying to bring them in line with what has already been granted. So that's my reason for voting no.
So that passes 4-1, and you do have a right to appeal that to the city council or try to figure out something to comply with the result. I hope that's our last signed application on the agenda tonight. Okay, the next item is 212 Monterey Avenue, application 16-111. It's a design permit application for an exterior remodel and addition of 304 square feet to an existing two-story multifamily residential building with a variance request to height located in the Central Village zoning district. Staff report.
Good evening, Commissioners. As previously stated, before you is an application for a design permit, height variance, and coastal development permit for a complete exterior remodel and minor addition to an existing two-story fourplex. The subject property is located within the eastern edge of the Central Village zoning district, adjacent to the Depot Hill residential neighborhood. So here is an image of the existing two-story fourplex. The subject property fronts Monterey Avenue with vehicular access to the rear off of El Camino Medio. Monterey Avenue serves as one of the main thoroughfares into the Village and Beach area, making the property visually significant. Along the front elevation, the property slopes 6 feet. There's also a change in grade from the rear to the front of the property of 12 feet. So this slide shows the proposed site plan. The applicant is proposing a complete exterior remodel to the fourplex, a 304 square foot addition to the back of the southernmost second-story unit, shown here in blue, and to reconfigure 250 square feet of the existing non-habitable bottom floor crawl space into non-habitable basement area. That's highlighted here in green. Here you can see the proposed front elevation as seen from Monterey Avenue. The applicant plans the complete remodel, including new features such as aluminum-clad windows with false balconies, metal railings, and a new tile roof overhangs. 2 feet of new cornice molding along the entire roof line, as well as a matching stucco band, and those 2 features are highlighted in blue. In addition, a new window along the proposed basement area and a 65 square foot tile accent feature centered in the middle of the building, highlighted in purple. So here you can see an image showing the existing conditions of the back of the building off El Camino Medio. Due to the significant grade change, the rear parking area is level with the second-story units. The stairs and walkway area are used to access the bottom floor units from the parking lot. Along the back of the building, the applicant is proposing to match the proposed improvements on the front and also remove and replace the existing deck, porch, and exterior stairwell. The shaded area represents the grade level along the back of the building. The proposed second-story bedroom addition is highlighted in blue. The existing development has 5 uncovered parking spaces on site, while the building is required by code to have 10 spaces. However, current parking standards for residential structures do not need to be met as long as the floor area is not increased by more than 10%. The 304 square foot addition constitutes a 9.8% addition, and additionally, the reconfigured basement, since it is under 251 square feet, does not count towards required parking. So therefore, the current parking standards of 10 spaces do not need to be met. The applicant is proposing to reconfigure the existing parking and propose 5 spaces, shown here in blue. Additionally, they're proposing to upgrade and add to the rear landscaping area. The existing property has a small landscaped area running along the rear of the property. lining the parking spaces. The applicant is proposing adding new trees, plants, shrubs, ground covers all throughout, and that's highlighted in green. That is going to comply with our 10% lot coverage requirement in the CV zone. So here's an image showing the existing front face of the building on Monterey. So this building is actually currently over height. The first floor and second floor each have 2 residential units. As mentioned earlier, the first floor is existing non-habitable crawl space, shown here in purple. The front face of the building ranges from 24.5 feet to 31 feet in height, while the zoning code limits height in the central village to 27 feet. This red color area shows the portion of the building that does not currently meet height limits. So this slide then shows the existing side elevations, south on the left, north on the right. Due to the slope of the lot, the existing southern elevation ranges from 31 to 25 feet in height. The north side elevation ranges from 20.5 to 24.5 feet in height. So again, the red area shows the portion of the existing building which is over height. No portion of the north side elevation is currently over height. The applicant's requesting a variance to this 27-foot height limit in order to add a 2-foot stucco cornice molding to the existing parapet roof line, again highlighted in blue. The applicant is requesting this added architectural element to the roof line in order to enhance the overall design of the building. The proposed cornice addition would increase the existing overheight roof line by an additional 2 feet. This red line once again shows the required 27-foot height limit. For further clarification on the height of both the existing and proposed building, this orange area shows the portion of the existing building which does not meet height requirements, while this yellow area shows the proposed cornice which does not meet height requirements. So this next slide kind of shows the similar height limits, but from an aerial view. Everything in red, so the southwestern portion of the building would not meet height limits, and this is for the proposed addition. So roughly half of the building would meet height, half of the building would not. And also, as you can see, that proposed bedroom addition on the bottom right would meet height requirements, so the new addition area would meet height of 27 feet. Pursuant to code, the Planning Commission can grant a variance when it finds special circumstances applicable to the property and where strict application of the code would deprive the property owner of privileges enjoyed by others in the vicinity. So although the proposed 2-foot stucco cornice addition would be a nice upgrade to the existing building, staff is unable to make findings to support the variance request. The existing building is already over height. As shown in this slide, neighboring properties along Monterey Avenue are similarly located on sloping property. A variance to further extend beyond the height limit would constitute a special privilege inconsistent with what was allowed on surrounding properties. The applicant can remove the proposed cornice addition on the rooftop or incorporate the cornice molding into the existing building instead of extending above. Staff recommends the Planning Commission condition the project, requiring that the plans be revised at time of building permit to not exceed the current height limit of the building. Staff recommends approval of the application for a remodel at 212 Monterey with a denial of the height variance as conditioned. I'm available to answer any questions. The architect and owners, I believe, are here.
Any questions?
I have a couple of questions. So I'm asking this question because I got a phone call today and someone said they thought that this building wasn't just for apartments, but that it was operated more as a co-op and that the units had been individually sold, and they asked me if that was correct, and I said not that I knew of, but.
So per the application they submitted, Joe and Susan Mignon are the only 2 listed as the property owners. I would ask that the applicant or owners speak to that.
And did we do any kind of tape or, you know, the orange webbing or anything on the building to show what this height was going to be so the people around it could see the impact of the increase in height?
No, we did not.
I would sort of like us to start doing that, particularly in places like in the village where there are view issues and height issues, because I think it's hard for the average person to really sort of judge how tall something is, and a lot of cities do require that. Also, did we get any kind of color board or information about the, I haven't seen.
I apologize, I did get it. Let me pass it around to you guys.
Okay. And my last question is, I know that in the R1 zoning district, it talks about not having to bring parking into conformance when there is an addition made to the property that doesn't exceed the 10%. Off the top of my head, I'm not remembering that in the multi-family district. So I was wondering what percentage, if you look at just this unit and this addition, what percentage that would be?
I could do some calculations real quickly and narrow that down.
And so, and I'm assuming just seeing that board go by that the center on the drawing, the sort of diamond area is going to be tile or something. Is there, I didn't see a color for that part, just the roof and the windows.
Yep.
This area in the middle. So those are all my questions right now.
And they're working on one.
So the new bedroom would definitely increase the existing unit that it's being added onto by more than 10%. It looks like it would be roughly 40.
And if we could sort of clarify what the wording is in
Yeah, and then-
the multi-family district.
So as Rich just put on the slide here, this is relates to all parking and loading. And it does say, for residential structures in any district, no additional parking shall be required for reconstruction or structurally altering an existing residential structure so long as the floor area of the structure is not increased by more than 10%.
Whole structure.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes.
I have one question. I don't know if Katie or Ryan could, and it may not be applicable, but what happened when with the city council on our update of our codes on height in the village? I think were there some changes, but
They agreed with the planning commission direction. There was a new idea brought up about limiting third stories to residential, and that's going back to the city council at next week's hearing to discuss.
well, okay, so you caught me. I was hoping you'd tell me because I'm really struggling to remember. We said 33 feet was a height, but a pitched roof, right? Not a flat roof?
Yep,
Okay.
512 minimum.
5 on 12, okay.
Okay, any other questions? If not, we'll open the public hearing and ask the applicant or applicant's representative to comment.
Good evening, Chairman, Commissioners. I'm Derek Van Alstyne. I'm the designer of this project, and I represent I represent Joe and Susan and Joan. There is hardly an aspect of this building that isn't improved by what we're proposing. It's a very difficult parcel. It's a pie-shaped parcel, and obviously it has quite an elevation change. I think had we brought this before you as a new building, you may have been able to approve a variance. I'm a little bit at a loss as to why a variance can't be had just because of the shape of the parcel and the topography. I can tell you that Steve and Patsy Ross, who live right behind this, when we did their house, that house is somewhere around 31 or 32 feet. I'm not sure because it's been a long time since we did it. But it had a number of variances, and some of them had to do with the height. So I don't think we'd be enjoying special circumstances by doing the parapet the way that we're suggesting to do it. It's a tremendous improvement to the building, and lowering the parapet would be out of scale with the building and wouldn't be correct, I don't think. I think we'd have to choose another method of ending the building height. So the bottom line is I think that there is enough of history of variance to grant it, and that it wouldn't be a special circumstances, and it's not a special circumstance particularly because of the topography and the shape of the parcel, and that has nothing really to do with the building that's on it. I think if it came by before you today because of that, you could probably approve it as a new building. Steve, I talked to Steve Ross yesterday, who lives in the house in the back, and he had some concerns, and I told him that I would address his concerns as part of the record, so that it can become part of the project. He wanted to make sure that the roof didn't become a deck, and we agreed that under no circumstances would the roof become usable as a deck. There have been problems with the building across Monterey that was designed to have a solar system in it, and they did a parapet wall, and now they use it for a deck, and the neighbors are not happy. The second issue that he brought up was the lighting that's on the building now stays on too long, and it's non-directional lighting. So when we do this building, we'll specifically choose lighting that doesn't cast light off-site, and will be directional. That's an easy do. He also had concerns about the amount of garbage and the collection of the garbage. So now that's going to be sequestered. It'll have a place to live, and it can be more easily maintained. In addition, the parking spaces that we're proposing are far greater than the ones that are there now. Actually, one of the parking spaces that is there now is not usable unless you have a motorcycle or a smart car, maybe. We're going to now have 5 spaces that are very usable and at a more appropriate angle to the street. In addition to that, when you come around El Camino Medio, we're taking out a whole bunch of concrete, and we're landscaping all the way around the building. So we've got a building that looks a whole lot better, that's well cushioned, well lit, is a building that Capitola can be proud of rather than what you see there now. So I would urge you to approve it with the variance. I think there is a way to make a finding to make this variance, and I would hope that you would do so. If you can't, I would like to see us come back with a redo, but I don't know what that would be better than what we've got now. That we've spent quite a long time putting this together, and staff has been great to work with back and forth. Staff felt that they couldn't support the variance, but I feel that you could. So I urge you to support it. If you have questions, I'll be glad to. The other thing is that there was a question of ownership. At one point, it was 4 owners. Actually, I don't think it was 4. I think it may have been 3. One of the owners owned 2 of the units. It's now under 1 ownership. So, if you have any other questions, I'll be glad to answer them if I can.
I just have a question. So obviously, one of the concerns from Mr. Ross and others is this the 2-foot addition of it, putting the cornice up on the molding on top, it looks to me, by looking at the plans, it'd be difficult maybe to bring it down because of the way the roof, tile roof, they're going to be popping out. Is there any way to, since you're the architect in the neighborhood that does all these wonders, is there a way to bring that cornice down any? We're not raising the roof structure at all, other than just this
That's right.
design.
It's simply a cornice.
Right.
The answer is no, not really, because there's structure behind this that you're not seeing. And the roof edge now is somewhat crenellated. It changes from front to back. What we're doing is unifying the whole roof structure and using the cornice, the depth of the cornice to do that. So it's really a unifying feature to the building.
That's all.
I have a question about the uninhabitable basement. Today, there are no windows on the front of that, and now there's proposal to have significant windows. Are those faux windows on the front of the building, or what is that basement proposed to be used for?
Well, it's storage, so there is outdoor furniture and stuff that gets stored in the winter. There's paint and all kinds of things to service the building. And what this came out of was, originally we had proposed an office, commercial space for that corner. And what came out of that line of discussion was, if we do that, we have to do ADA compliant parking and path of travel. There's no way to do that on this property. So we dropped that. Staff really liked the idea that the building had a feeling of coming down to the ground, and we agreed. You want it to be friendly when you're walking up the sidewalk, and the windows, even though they're going to the basement space, allow you to be friends with the building as you're walking by. If it's just a blank wall, it's just a blank wall.
I have a question. So I have no problem seeing the shape and topography of this lot as warranting a variance in the sense that it's an unusual circumstance. But the other part is that you need to show that this is not a special privilege. And what other applicants have done when they want to get a variance is they've gone to other neighborhood lots and said, let's say it's a parking, or they say, look, here's one here, here's a photo of this one, here's a photo of this one, and so on, and then that helps us make a finding that it's not a special privilege. And I mean, so far I haven't heard that from you. Is it possible you think that can be done and you could do that?
Of course. I mean, all you have to do is look at the line of houses on El Camino Medio.
But
and
those are a
back.
different zoning district. The houses on El Camino Medio are currently zoned automatic review, and they're not part of the Central Village zoning district. That's one of the reasons they can't have vacation rentals, and when we just went through all of that, we decided not to have those units as vacation rentals. So those are a different zoning district.
But I think it would still apply, though, right? The design portion would still I mean, the issue really is the fact that is the slope that it's on, the lot that it's on, the top of
I would
the-
like to see, I mean, this is a great improvement. I don't want to get ahead of ourselves here, but we're constrained, as you've heard us talking about here all day today. And so, yes.
Because Brian and I recently went around town with a very large ruler and measured buildings, the superintendent building is at 31 feet above grade. That's
But design features, do we have things that protrude into
design
that?
features. The lighthouse
Yes.
received a variance for a design feature.
Yeah, so I mean, in the staff report and in your presentation, it would be nice to have more of a basis for concluding that this is not a special privilege.
Well, I would, for me, it would be hard for me to vote for the variance unless they were willing, like, to put up the orange fencing and that, so we could actually see what it looks like, and the neighbors around there could actually see what's going on. And
Okay, any other questions for Derek? If not, anyone else in the audience like to address this item? we'll close the public hearing. And Commissioners, we've already kind of gotten ahead of ourselves, but we'll keep going.
Well, I'll jump in with just a couple of comments. Variances on height in the Central Village are on the other side of the fence from me most of the time, just because that's what they are. It seems to me that this one already operates under a variance, and extending that variance, expanding it is, I would struggle to do that, and I would agree with Commissioner Westman. We would definitely need to see orange fencing up there to see what it's really going to do. I don't understand, and with all due respect to the architect, I'm sure that he could explain it to me. So I would understand why the addition of 2.5 feet couldn't come down and be lower than it is. But even if I agree that that's the case, I can't see granting the variance.
So my response to that is that if you look at the topography of this building, on the north end, it's under the actual height limit, and it just goes flat along from there, and it's the ground that drops out from under it.
I hear what you're saying, and I think as I said, I think if I could see the height, and the neighbors who are concerned about it can see the height and understand what it's going to be and the impact of it, you probably could convince me to vote for the variance. I'm just not quite there without that other sort of piece of information.
I'll wait till Sam speaks and then
You wait till I say.
Okay.
I already got mine.
Well, I struggle with justifying the variance from, and it's already has a variance at 31 feet, and now we're going to increase it to 33 feet. I don't quite see the connection with the topography from 31 feet to now 33 feet. It is in the Central Village, which has a lot of sensitivity to height, and the residents around it, their view corridor out to the bay. And we just passed a new zoning ordinance which allowed for increases, but based upon certain conditions of articulation, peak, so that we could gain more, I think, architectural interest or interesting features in the village. And this project does not offer any of that. And on the previous item, we struggled about denying a variance when everything around it had already received a variance, and there was concern about this kind of encroachment, and it seems to me that if we do that here, we're starting out the gate to allow a variance from on a project that I think doesn't justify it, and it doesn't meet our new zoning ordinances that warrant a variance. So those are my thoughts about it. Whether we put up the orange poles or not, I don't think that I could support a variance to 33 feet.
Well, again, I'm going to be on the other end of the stick here. First of all, I think the architectural part is what this is about. The architecture is what makes this a different building to me. And remember, the eastern side is not, the eastern side of the building, the northern side of the building is not the problem. It's just that southwest one corner that is really an issue. The neighbors aren't complaining about the height. I totally agree with Mr. Ross, the concern about it turning into a deck, but we've been assured that it's not going to be a rooftop deck. So I haven't heard any neighbors concerned about the height, other than, well, Mr. Ross doesn't want to see this going on to 33 feet, but we've approved that. And if I remember correctly, we've made some caveats in the new code for architectural features outside, like the chimneys and stuff like that, go above 33 feet. So to me, this isn't really pushing the variance issue. I think the fact that somebody's taken the time to improve the architectural design of this and make it look better, to me, I don't have an issue with the variance. And to put orange netting up on that one little corner, I thought Ryan's PowerPoint did a really good job of identifying that corner that would need that piece of netting.
Commissioners, we're kind of divided here, so we're going to need some,
I just want to jump back in. I think what I heard you say was that we had not received any neighbors complaining about the height, but I do believe we did get a letter from one of the neighbors.
Mr. Ross is right here.
No, from Molly Ording, from
Oh,
Italy.
well,
actually.
Molly didn't send me a letter, so I didn't get it.
I thought it went to the
I
planning
thought it went to the
commission.
planning commission.
Yeah. And you're talking, yeah, the height thing, yeah, you could put the orange netting up there. You're talking about one little sliver corner that's.
And I got
that's
a
2 feet, so-
call from a resident up on Depot Hill asking me about it. Same person inquired about the ownership. So
Okay.
okay.
one other person.
So, I'm seeing two clear directions from two of the commissioners. I'm just trying to think where we should go here. I'm seeing need more information and
I'm leaning way towards Sam.
no variance. Okay.
Well, I'm probably a no variance because I don't have the information I need to grant the variance.
So do we have a motion? I'll just say I'll reiterate my sense is that if the applicant came in with more evidence of other buildings within the zoning, in the area like the superintendent's building, then it wouldn't be a special privilege. Then I think the topography and the shape of the lot justify it, especially because it's only 27 feet or so when you get to the north end.
So do we want to continue it so they would have the opportunity to do that and they could put up the orange fencing and
Right now, we're going to have a 3-2 vote one way or the other, so I think maybe the applicant seems to be, I'm seeing an indication they would like a time to regroup and come back at the next meeting, so do I have a motion to continue this?
I'll move to
information?
continue it. And that, yeah, if we could have the orange netting put up during this interim period, so, you know, the neighbors and residents can really see it and visualize it.
Everyone?
I'll second it. Or go ahead. I'll second it.
Okay, any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
No,
Okay, that passes 4-1. Commissioner Welch, negative on that. See you in June. So the last public hearing is 4530 Garnet Street, application 16-157, design permit application for a remodel and 497 square foot addition to an existing single-family residence located in the R1 zoning district. And this does not require variance, which makes it unique in itself.
Good evening again, Commissioners. Before you is an application for a design permit to construct a 497 square foot addition and exterior remodel to an existing residence and detached accessory structure at 4530 Garnett Street. Property is zoned R1 Single Family Residential. Here you can see the front of the home. The property contains a 550 square foot single-family residence in the front, highlighted in blue, and a detached 376 square foot accessory structure in purple in the rear yard, which the applicant proposes to use as a living area. The applicant is proposing to remodel and add 497 square feet to all four sides of the existing single-story home. And these areas are shown in red. The new addition areas would comply with development standards in the R1 zoning district. So the finished home would use board and bat siding and a standing seam metal roof. The applicant is proposing a decorative cupola on the roof at the rear of the residence that would be up to 19 feet in height, which is compliant with the 25-foot height limit for this zone. Next is discussion on the detached accessory structure. So the property currently includes the 376 square foot detached structure, which was originally used as a garage and later converted to a secondary dwelling unit. The structure is currently vacant, but remains equipped with electricity, plumbing, gas, heating, a full kitchen with a stove, sink, and refrigerator, a full bathroom, and a living and sleeping area. So the subject property is just 3,200 square feet, and the existing detached accessory structure has just a 6-inch side yard setback and 2.5-foot rear yard setback. Under today's regulations, the accessory structure could not be permitted as a secondary dwelling unit because the property does not meet the minimum 5,000 square foot lot size requirement. Furthermore, the applicant has indicated that the accessory structure has not been used as a secondary dwelling unit since the new owners purchased the property in 2014. Accordingly, the use is considered abandoned pursuant to the municipal code, which states that nonconforming activities lose their legal status after not being used for more than 90 days. Consequently, this detached accessory structure can no longer be a secondary dwelling unit. The applicant proposed to keep the accessory structure in this same nonconforming location and remove the existing kitchen and 66 square feet from the front of the building. This is highlighted on red, and this is the existing floor plan we're still looking at. In accordance with the municipal code, this structure can be retained with the current setback encroachments because these improvements to the property do not exceed 80% of the value of the existing structures. So here is the proposed floor plan of the detached accessory structure showing the removal of this kitchen area. Although the existing kitchen would be removed, staff is concerned that the proposed plans refer to the detached accessory structure as quote-unquote living, which could easily then be used as an unpermitted and non-conforming secondary dwelling unit. Staff has therefore added condition of approval number 5 to prohibit the structure from having a kitchen, gas line, or 220 plug, and limiting the drain size to under 1.5 inches. So this slide gets into some of the definitions. Pursuant to the code, garages and accessory buildings other than approved secondary dwelling units may not be used for human habitation. The code then defines accessory buildings as a portion of the main building or a detached subordinate building, the use of which is purely incidental to that of the main building structure, and which shall not contain living or sleeping quarters except as provided in Chapter 17.99 for secondary dwelling units. So by virtue of removing the kitchen, the detached accessory structure, although serving as a living area, would not be considered a dwelling unit under the municipal code regulations. Therefore, staff recommends approval of the proposed addition and remodel to 4530 Garnett, subject to the previously mentioned conditions and findings of approval. Both the applicant and owners are here to answer questions.
Questions of Hearing none, we'll open the public hearing. The applicant or representative wish to comment?
Good evening, Dennis Norton. I'm representing the Cochran family. Suzanne and Clark are here also to speak publicly. Their intent, this is going to be their permanent residence when it's finished, and that the intent is to keep it in scale with the neighborhood. They chose to go, instead of going to a 2-story structure and taking the whole thing down, they're keeping the basic form and structure of the original structure, particularly the back part. And to make a couple things clear, that was a rental in this town for 43 years. It was providing affordable housing in our community for 43 years. They chose to not have it as a secondary unit, but they want to keep the structure. Nobody has rented it since they bought the property. That's through 3 years. And this 90-day thing, I don't quite understand that. You don't use this, rent your place out for 90 days and the city can take it away from you? That's a pretty crazy law there, I think. But the intent is, to the family, is they have no intention of renting it out to them. They just want to keep both structures, the back structure intact, and use it as they please. It's a legal living unit. And them telling someone that one of the conditions here says is they can't sleep in it. Was that a contradiction, or is that, I don't know how that could ever be written, that you could call something a living unit and not allow somebody to sleep in it. They agree with all the conditions of approval with the exception of 3. Number 1, there should be no sleeping quarters in the accessory structure. I don't know, I thought staff was going to remove that. I don't know why it's still in there. This is a legal living unit. You should be allowed to sleep in it. There's no reason you can't sleep in it. The second items are the attached accessory structure being used as a secondary unit. And they're removing the kitchen, no problem. They don't want none of the kitchen. There's no 220 in it. They don't plan on putting a 220 in it. But if it's a living unit, you got to heat it somehow. You can't take gas away from somebody in a structure like this in any circumstance. You need gas for heating, and it's the most economical, environmentally friendly way that we have to provide that there. We would like the gas to stay in the unit. The rest of the kitchen is going away. There's no intent of using it as a secondary structure. The other one, just a minor issue, but 3 years ago when I bought the property, they came into the planning process, and they brought in a landscape plan for our driveway and all the landscaping. That landscaping plan that was approved did not have the 2-foot side yard landscape strip up there. And that's why when you go out there and look at the property, the driveway goes from the edge of the lot line over the 16 feet wide for the 2-car parking out in front. But that landscaping you see has already been approved by the city. So they would like to just keep the landscaping as it is with the driveway going to the edge of the property, and not have to tear that out to put a landscape plan. The city did already approve it. So those are requests. The rest of the conditions of approval are fine with the applicant. They're going to be a great addition to our community, and I hope that you approve this form. Thank you very much.
Anyone else? A question of Mr. Norton?
Can I ask Mr. Norton a question? Certainly, the applicant has a right to, make this application and apply for it, but I'm assuming you have discussed with them the option of tearing it down and building a more conforming kind of structure, because it seems like with all the work that's going to be done, a major portion of the building is going to have to be demolished anyway to, accomplish the goals that you are hoping to achieve.
Yes. I have had that discussion with them, and that's certainly possibly a consideration, but they chose to go through this process and save what they have there. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay. Anyone else like to speak? Sure.
Suzanne Cochran, 4530 Garnet. I just want to make a couple comments. Our original intent when we put this plan together was to connect the two buildings and have it be one, using the current footprint and extending the main house. So that was our original plans that we submitted back in August of last year. So now we're to this point, which we were surprised that we got the conditions that we did from staff, but I understand they're following the rules. So just want to let you know that that was our original intent. And if we do go to Plan B, which was mentioned, why we didn't look to tear the building down, if you could explain what the process would be based on where we are now with this application and how that would happen, so that when we leave here tonight, if we do make that decision, we would know what to expect. Thank you.
We can let staff do that.
Yes.
Sure. If they chose to go with Plan B based on asking for a continuance, it would be within the same application that you have today, and it would be continued, and you could come back to a future hearing with a plan for a single-family home on that lot that meets the floor area ratio and the development standards. Otherwise, if it went through a formal denial, or I guess that would otherwise be approved, but if it were denied, then you could ask for it to be denied without prejudice. And at that point, you'd have to submit a new application, would take in new fees, new application, and it would be reviewed by the Planning Commission at a future date. So that would put a stop to the current application and require you to resubmit.
Okay. Anyone else? We'll close the public hearing. Commissioners.
Well, I'm having trouble recalling. It was only a month ago. You can imagine that. So our last discussion about ADUs, we changed the minimum from 5,000 to 4,000, or do we actually get to 3,200? Because I know
4,000.
the honorable chairperson there was pushing for 3,200 in the jewel box, but we stayed at 4,000. Is that correct?
We did, and it was for internal ADUs, which this would comply with because it's an existing structure. But it's only at 3,200 square feet, it's a lot.
Yeah, and we said 4,000.
4,000.
See, Chairperson,
Yeah,
you were right. No questions.
Well, I just have to ask for clarification here, because an ADU is an accessory dwelling unit, right? It's like it can be an apartment. It can be marketed as an independent living space. What this is an exterior structure that they want to use as a part of their home. So I can envision it being a den or with a pool table or whatever. There's a utility room there, so that's where the laundry's going to get done. Yes, there's a bathroom there. I can easily envision having a Murphy bed that when the kids come home from college and come for a visit, or the grandkids come, they use it as a guest room. And the condition that you have placed here would prevent that from being possible. Am I reading it correctly?
To clarify, I think there's some confusion. I believe Mr. Norton was referring to condition number 5, which says that the unit may not be used as a secondary dwelling unit. I don't believe there's anything in the condition that says you cannot sleep in there. But I would like to clarify that staff's intent when we see these types of situations is to prevent a future unpermitted use type. And I believe that the Cochrans have all the best intentions, but someday someone else will own that house. And if it's fully equipped to function as a second unit, there's a good chance that it may someday become a second unit. So we really tried to strike a cogent compromise with this, where they could continue to use it as a detached living area while trying to discourage its use as an unpermitted second unit. And we may have missed the mark, and we certainly won't be offended if the Commission wants to tinker with our recommendation at all.
Yeah, well, condition 1 says no sleeping, so.
The condition doesn't say no sleeping.
It says
No.
There's no sleep-in quarters.
Within the accessory structure. There should be no sleeping quarters within the accessory structure.
That's condition number 1.
Yeah.
Maybe staff could address what is a sleeping quarter.
So I think that might be relic language that was supposed to come out, because we don't define sleeping quarter, and we discussed this internally, and being devil's advocate, that was my comment. Why can't you roll a cot in there and sleep in there? I don't know if that's a significant problem necessarily. The issue is having to be used as a full-time residence.
Right.
So I think we'd be comfortable striking that for clarity, and I would apologize for that oversight.
This is very confusing, but I think we're starting to get some clarity. I mean, the goal is to, under certain circumstances that don't meet requirements, to have a separate unit that somebody is occupying as a separate living unit. But I don't think we're trying to prevent people from taking naps. Right.
Well, I would
Yeah,
think
I
they'd
don't
be able
have
to
any-
use it to have guests or families stay there.
Right.
I don't
Otherwise,
have
what do
any
you do with it?
difficulty
Yeah.
having
Yeah, I mean-
taking out the no sleeping quarters. I mean, I think that makes some sense. And personally, I don't have any difficulty with them leaving in the gas line, because I agree, even if it was an art studio or,
Laundry room.
someone used it as an office for their, because they had a home business or something like that, it would need to be heated. And so I don't have any difficulty with them having gas heat in it.
Well, in the utilities, they should have the option of having a gas heater, a gas dryer if they want to have a gas dryer.
Yeah, yeah. So I would take out the line about no sleeping. I would say, having the gas line is fine. I was a little confused about the applicant's presentation regarding landscaping. So we're saying we want a new landscaping plan, and they're saying they want to leave the landscaping that's there in place.
I share some of your confusion. Planning does not review existing developed single-family lots landscape plans. So I'm not sure under, when or how the city reviewed that plan.
because condition number 7 says prior to issuance of a building permit, a final landscape plan shall be submitted and approved by the Community Development Department. So I'm assuming that if they submitted a plan which just shows what's there, what they're planning to keep, that's all they sort of need to do. They don't need to tear it all out and put in new landscaping.
Yeah, it's a standard condition that we say a final landscape plan be submitted, just so we are very clear when the building permit comes in, what to inspect when planning goes out to do our final.
Okay.
Could we
So
also remove the prohibition of 220
Thank you.
in there? I mean, speaking to, washer and dryer, if they
Yes.
wanted to put that there, you'd need 220 if you wanted to have electric dryer, so.
So basically, we're down to the idea that we don't want a kitchen or facilities that would suggest a separate rental.
Right.
The staff has suggested an easy way to assure that, but there are problems with cutting off the utilities, and we just have to take our chances on enforcement.
See, it struggles because 220, obviously, a dryer could be 220 or gas, so you got to give them the option there, it seems to me. And then, if you happen to be a shop guy and want to do a welding, where do you plug in to do, to me, I understand the intent, but I just think it's a little bit too far.
Yeah, it seems like we say in there clearly that the detached accessory structure may not be used as a secondary dwelling unit. And so if anybody tries to use it as a secondary dwelling unit, we have that condition in there. And it seems like we could even add to that the structure is prohibited from having a kitchen. And sort of,
Yeah, the better way to enforce that is really to have penalties in the nature of being able to recoup any rent if it's discovered, and then if the tenant can bring it. But our ordinance hasn't gone that direction yet.
So it looks like we're making some progress here.
Yeah.
Is this leaning more towards what you were, because I think
Well, I
with
think we
those
should,
removed,
there's reason to try to make this work, because it's nice to see someone come in with a plan that keeps the scale
right.
in the area without overbuilding.
So it looks like you're working on a motion right there.
okay, so well, I'll try this, and then we can just talk about it, and it'll
Okay.
give us some framework. So I would like to make a motion to approve the project with the conditions listed, modifying condition 1 to take out there shall be no sleeping quarters within the accessory structure, to modify condition 5 to simply have it read that the detached accessory structure may not be used as a secondary dwelling unit. The detached accessory structure is prohibited from having a kitchen, period, and just leave it at that. And then on condition number 7, I haven't quite figured out the wording, but something that says, a final landscape plan shall be submitted and approved by the Community Development Director. Landscape plan shall reflect the Planning Commission's approval when we said it could be the existing landscape.
Existing conditions.
Existing conditions. So that condition would work as it is. And with that, I would recommend that we approve it.
Slight friendly amendment
Sure.
if possible. On condition number 7, the landscaping, that they verify that the existing landscaping conditions allow the 2 parking places. Because when I was out there today, there's a landscaping strip that looks to me like there's not enough room on the other side of it for 2 spaces. So if they need to remove that or keep that landscaped area low plant so they can park 2 cars there,
Okay,
I'd like to just add that into the condition.
yep, that's fine with me.
Okay. That is a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
That passes unanimously.
Good job, sir.
Thank you.
Okay, that ends our, the last item.
We got to move something, right?
We got the environmental.
Thank you. Thank you. Let me just mention that the last item, Capitola Mall redevelopment, is continued to June 1. And then we will go back to our consent agenda, which Commissioner Story has asked be heard, full hearing. So staff report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As you recall, I believe it was in our February meeting during the zoning code update, we talked about updating our environmentally sensitive habitat area map. The map is from the early 1980s. It was created before there was GIS systems, and the map reflects that. It's projected here before you. It covered a number of areas which were fully urban developed and really was not appropriate to map as being environmentally sensitive. So with the Planning Commission and subsequently City Council's consent, we did hire a biologist to go out, do qualitative surveys of these areas to update the map as appropriate. Basically, areas that have native habitat were kept in environmentally sensitive areas, and those that did not were removed. And I'll go through some of those very quickly. Just 5 examples of areas which appeared to be obvious mismapping situations. Nob Hill Shopping Center was environmentally sensitive. The lower and upper beach and village parking lots are in the mapped area. Portions of the Central Village were marked as environmentally sensitive, as well as Depot Hill and areas with developed single-family lots, and New Brighton State Park in the campground areas. And then just comparing these to an aerial, as I explain, all these parts that we thought were areas do show clear signs of development. There's no native habitat, and certainly nothing of value for sensitive wildlife species. So this is the proposed map that the biologist drew based on her observations in the field. It narrowed most of these areas back to where we do have native or riparian vegetation. One area that she did add is near McGregor Drive. There is some area up there that has some oaks and some native understory. She felt that that should actually be added in, and that seems like a reasonable conclusion to staff. And here's just a little bit of a closer look at some of those areas near McGregor. And then in summary, this figure shows you a comparison. The lighter green areas are the current mapped areas, and the darker green are overlaid. That would be the amended map if approved. This would go into our new zoning code and eventually get submitted to the Coastal Commission for inclusion into the LCP. I would add that the implication of being in an environmentally sensitive habitat area is that any property in that area is supposed to do a biology study for any type of development. So if some came in the village in a mapped area and they want to replace windows, we would technically have to ask for a biology study. And then the other implication is you also have to observe increased setbacks from those areas. So, whether it be the village or Nob Hill, you'd have to set back 35 feet from the parking lot to do any work there. And so that's what we tried to clean up, and I'm happy to answer any questions or offer more detail. Thank you.
All eyes are on me.
You're the one who wanted
Right.
to hear it.
Yes, and I did, and the reason, and to particularly get to, I think the question I had about this revised map, and particularly focusing on the beach and village parking lot number 2, because that was designated as environmentally sensitive when it was a mobile home park, which is much more significantly developed than it is now as a parking lot, and as well as a temporary parking lot. It's meant to ultimately be maybe transitioned to another use. And so it seems to me, and that there are still environmentally sensitive, I think, features in that particular area. And I didn't quite understand, why it should stop at Noble Gulch and no longer cross over. The creek continues to go, even though it's not sunsetted. Right. But But there could be all kinds of future projects involving that property that's owned by the city. And it just seemed to me that it should continue the designation. And I didn't quite understand the logic of removing that particular one for the reasons I've stated.
So the definition of environmentally sensitive habitat area is that it does support some native vegetation that's used by sensitive wildlife species. From the biologist, in my point of view, the lower Pacific Cove parking lot or Beach and Village parking lot number 2, the majority of it has no habitat, it's asphalt and, impermeable surfaces. There are some redwoods and oaks along the slopes, however, the understory is highly degraded. There's a lot of non-natives. You have poison hemlock, a lot of English ivy, and a variety of other invasive species. And then on top of that, one of the things I talked about the biologists with is in terms of habitat value for wildlife, there really isn't any. When you're looking at habitat value, you want to have connection to larger areas, wildlife corridors, and things that aren't subject to severe edge effects where this area is. You have residential developed lots on top of the slope and a parking lot on the bottom. In terms of the other concern, I did talk to one of the council members about this as well. They said, well, would this preclude us from someday transforming that area to a park or maybe even natural open space, daylighting the creek? And it wouldn't. All it does is it imposes development restrictions on adjacent properties and, in fact, could limit our ability to develop as an active park someday by virtue of that map. Now, I'd like to think that people would see through that, but someone could raise an issue and say, no, it's environmentally sensitive. You can't have activity down there. So that's what we're trying to avoid with it.
So I think this new map is wonderful, and I can 100% say that the person who prepared the original map had absolutely no biological expertise at all. Because I didn't. I didn't. I mean, that was back in the days
She
when
fell on her sword.
in the 80s we were doing it. So I think it's wonderful that we've actually had a real biologist, come and put together a map that represents what are the environmentally sensitive habitats within the community and meet what is the definition for environmentally sensitive habitat, rather than somebody who just glued a piece of paper down.
It's changed a lot since then. The meetings have changed since
Yeah.
you did it the first time, right? And I really appreciate you updating that. I had one question, and it looks like you just used from the last map, but this area that's Escalona Gulch, Monarch, Butterfly Cove, it kind of has this little, it has a main circle, and then it kind of comes down a little bit to another little bulb area. Well, where is that at?
So for that particular area, I provided the biologist with previous maps done by Butterfly biologists for Monarch Cove development. That one was done in 2014, and then we had another one, I want to say from the early 2000s when they did a subdivision just to the east of that.
Okay.
So she took those areas that the previous biologist mapped, went out in the field, looked at it, and said, this is the area where there's habitat or trees that provide wind protection for the habitat.
Yeah, I didn't know what that is, but I trust them.
Okay. Commissioner Story, you okay with
Thank you. Oh, and I appreciate the discussion, open discussion about it. And in spite of your historical perspective, Susan, I'm not sure if that's changed my perspective. It seems like the definitions, as well as changing the designations, the definitions are kind of changing as well. And so that I think that's my issue, and that's probably why I would vote no on this and new map. And it's only about that parking area and that property.
So
it's there.
Just to clarify again, the definition hasn't changed. It's been in the Coastal Act since 1974, I believe. So the definition remains the same. Again, I just think it potentially could limit people who lives on top of, like on Beulah or Pilgrim, those homes, if they wanted to build an addition, they'd have to observe a setback technically from the parking lot. I don't know if that's the goal of that regulation, but I understand your
The fact
concern.
Well, right. I mean, with the landscaping too, I don't, maybe they should. Maybe there should be setbacks from that cliff going down into the parking lot. So, but that, we don't need to belabor this.
Yeah, but I
just-
think that the
understood.
fact that the Coastal Commission is going to have to approve this is a good protection, because they have the expertise also.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if it's changed again.
So I'll make a motion to approve the new environmentally sensitive habitat map as part of our zoning update.
Second?
Second?
Okay, we'll have a roll call vote.
Commissioner Story,
No, for the reasons expressed.
Commissioner Welsh,
Yes.
Commissioner Westman,
Yes.
Commissioner Smith,
Yes.
Chairperson Newman.
Yes. Okay, that passes 4-1. That takes us to Director's Report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a few quick items for you this evening. At the last city council meeting, we came very close to completing a review of the zoning code update. There are 2 remaining issues they will talk about next week. As Katie previously mentioned, Councilmember Bertrand introduced an idea to limiting current and future third stories in the village to residential uses only. So we'll talk about that next week. And then we're also going to talk a little bit more about the environmentally sensitive habitat area maps as we did this evening. Another item I believe that happened at the previous meeting is the council has directed staff to initiate a proactive code enforcement effort for sandwich board signs and unpermitted outdoor displays in the village. We've begun inventory in the businesses that are out of compliance. We expect to send out letters giving them 30 days to come into compliance tomorrow. And on the 31st day or very closely thereafter, we will begin enforcing by removing unpermitted signs or issuing fines as appropriate.
Rich, will that notice inform them how they may go about having
Yes.
the permits? Okay. So.
Yeah, we'll explain to them the permitting process, if there's one available. In some cases, it just might be an abatement issue. And then finally, the council also authorized us to promote a free energy efficiency upgrade program in the city. This would be funded through our CDBG allocation. 2 primary goals of the program. First, to meet climate action plan goals, reduce carbon consumption and our carbon footprint in the city. And then secondarily, our CDBG monies do expire in September, and I've been alerted that unlike past funding cycles, the state is highly unlikely to grant any extensions. So we'd like to spend the money that we have now, help our lower income, handicap, and disabled residents upgrade their homes. It would allow up to $7,500 for a variety of energy or water efficiency programs, and I'll share the brochure with you all once it's ready to go. And that concludes my director's report. Thank you.
Commissioner Communications? Any? Okay, well, we will adjourn to June 1st. See you then. Did we have a